Did you know over 700 million tonnes of food is thrown away each year, some of which are still in perfect condition? It's about a third of all food that's produced is wasted. Now, this episode is with Jenny Costa, the founder of Rubies and Rubble, and we talk about how wasting food feeds climate change. Rubies in the Rubble make award-winning condiments and are packed with flavour and purpose. Condiments are a fantastic way of preserving food and extending their shelf life. Rubies in the Rubble have a range of condiments that are made from fruit and vegetables that are usually surplus or rejected by supermarkets and sourced directly from the farms. And their vegan mayo is made with aquafaba, a plant-based alternative to eggs that is usually thrown away. Now, if you haven't heard about Rubies in the Rubble, then you need to catch up.
How did you come onto the name Rubies in the Rubble?
It was a play on Diamonds in the Dust. So it was when I first started formally seeing food that was being wasted that seemed perfectly good, and I just couldn't believe it. It was just like these are gems. There's so much value in this, but yet being discarded. And so I was like, it was one of those kind of feelings where you're just like, this is just like diamonds in the rough, and diamonds, that kind of thing. And I was just like, I'm going to call it Rubies in the Rubble, and it kind of sums up everything that is about sort of valuing the underseen or seeing value in what our society with so much consumption often throws.
All right, awesome. So Jenny, firstly, I'd love to know how you went from being in asset management sales to become a founder of a sustainable food brand.
Yeah, not the most obvious switch. So I suppose going right back, I was brought up on a small farm on the west coast of Scotland. My father has a small beef farm. My mother's an artist. She's a really keen gardener. We grew all of our fruit and veg to last us the whole year round. She was really proud that she would pickle, preserve, freeze, any way of preserving it to last through the winter months. We also had our own wind turbines. We had our own water supply from the hill, so it was really self-sufficient. And as a very small holding, I suppose, and with my parents being around the whole time, food was such a big part of our life, and really knowing what went into food and the value of food. But then I went off to university. I studied mathematics. I did a master's in maths and economics, and ended up in a hedge fund in London. And I loved my time there, but I was not passionate about what I was doing from the finance point of view. And I kept on thinking, if I was here when I'm 40 and I've just stayed for the comfort of the income and things, I'll be really disappointed. And I started researching what I might be interested in, and randomly read an article about bin divers, and it was talking about people getting arrested from trying to get into the back of supermarkets at the end of the day, and supermarkets locking their bins, and there was a lot of food that was perfectly good but yet being discarded. It was sort of past its sell by date but not past its use by date. And it got me thinking, not that I wanted to become a bin diver, but which I did a bit of, but it just made me think about the whole food supply chain, and food being perishable and governed by the weather, a really unpredictable thing. And then on the other side of it, with the demand side of it, us humans deciding what we want to eat at 4 p.m. And in the middle of that, you've got this clunky supply chain of huge supermarkets displaying beautiful, ample amounts of perishable goods. And what happened when supply and demand didn't add up properly? And the more I started researching about it, I just couldn't believe this was back in 2010, and no one was talking about food waste. It wasn't seen as an environmental concern. I hadn't even realized it was such a big issue. But when reading that we were wasting a third of what we produce globally, and yet by 2050, we expect to double our food supply to feed the expected 9 billion people on our planet, but yet wasting a third of what we produce globally, and knowing that agriculture is the single largest contributor to greenhouse gases, I was just like, how are we doing this? Like, if there's one thing that we could all do overnight to make a real big impact on our environmental footprint, we just don't waste food. It's got such a big impact in growing it. And I just couldn't unbelieve it. So I was spouting facts around this to everyone that would listen to me. And then I started going along to visit these wholesale fruit and veg markets and seeing fruit and veg with my own eyes being discarded by the pallet, and boxes saying coming in from Kenya or from Holland. And it made me think about my mum's fruit and veg garden. I was just like, whenever she had an abundance of stuff, like say when we ever had too many raspberries or too much rhubarb or tomatoes, she'd just turn it into a preserve or a condiment, and we would enjoy it in months to come. And it was the old-fashioned natural way of preserving fruit and veg that might not have a long shelf life when fresh, but then pickled or made into a jam or anything, can extend it for two years as the shelf life. And I just thought this is a great vehicle to raise awareness around this need to value food again, and seeing it as this precious resource. So I got out some of my mum's old recipes and just thought I'm gonna have a go. Called it Rubies in the Rubble, and here I am, sort of years later, 8 years later, still doing the same thing. And the whole ethos really is taking fruit and veg that would otherwise be wasted, so creating a practical solution to food waste, turning it into a product that preserves it naturally for up to 2 years once jarred, but also really as a vehicle to carry a message around this need to value food and seeing it as a precious resource. And it's been amazing that although since 2014 there's been a bit of hype around food waste and this understanding of its environmental impact, or a bit of awareness around it, but it's only been recently that it's really been turned up a notch, and companies, governments, corporates are starting to think, right, we need to start making an action plan and getting our food waste measured as a starting point.
Yeah, for sure. And like, how was the first weeks of lockdown, right? Because when I went to the supermarkets, when everyone felt like they were going into, they were stocking up, and I couldn't find a single, there was the shelves were bare. There was condiment. People would filled like what felt like trolley full of condiments, like they were going to go into another.
I mean, from going from a time where you'd be eating out a bit, or you'd be sometimes going into work and things, not every meal and every purchase that you ever did was consumed at home. I think Condiments had its heyday this year because everyone wanted to spice up a lunch in a different way, and it's a very easy way of taking leftovers or a boring salad or something that you're doing and making it taste very different from yesterday's, with either a spicy tomato or an onion relish, or some different types of mayos and flavour profiles. So it's been a fantastic year for discovery in Condiments. I think for us, so in March or the beginning of 2020, we were 80% focused on restaurant trade. So retail was a very small proportion of our sales. So come March, it was a pretty horrific sort of moment for the team of sort of questioning. Our business almost sort of stopped overnight, and questioning what we did. And I, being the ultimate, I'm always quite optimistic about things, and I was like, no, this is perfect, we'll keep to strategy. Restaurants, people are bored now because they're sitting furloughed. Let's support them as much as we can do. Let's build relationships. Let's line up customers for all the places that we've been dying to get into. And it was great that all head chefs and things were longing to chat to you, whereas normally they're so busy. And so we did a lot with our building relationships in restaurants at that time. But come July time, realised that this was not a quick fix. I thought we'd all be back eating out, life would be normal by September again, like I'm sure many did. And then so we started to really pivot our whole business towards retail, and that for us was quite a major thing, because our manufacturers that we were working with for catering didn't bottle into glass, and at the time of COVID it was quite hard finding new manufacturers, doing that whole supply chain shift. Also supporting our farmers, where taking produce that would otherwise be wasted, there was either a huge amount of waste going on because their route to market was either serving restaurants in the past, or they were going, it was absolutely mental time for them, that they were just constantly trying to keep up with the demand from retail, and then trying to find enough workers to support them on the farm. So it's been a really interesting year, and we're now, having been 80% focused on restaurants, now 80% of our turnover is coming from retail. We launched in Waitrose nationwide. We did we've just launched in 400 stores and Co-op. Our website is never, it used to be a little piddle of sort of a tiny concentration for us, and now it's booming, and it's a fantastic way to feel a lot closer to our customer. And we're now creating different ranges for 2021 and looking forward towards that retail strategy.
How did that compare to, I wonder if you can walk us through some of them, some of the biggest challenges you faced when starting your company?
Yeah, I think, well, I think first of all, everyone starts companies in very different ways depending on your personality. I'm not a planner. I am very much like, I like to do things on a small scale. If it sticks, great. If it doesn't, pivot quickly. And so I, before starting, took a couple of market stalls and just ran markets around London. I took a couple up in Marylebone, a couple down in East London, and just tried and just kept on trialing my products as much as possible. And then I suppose from there it was the question of like, how do you scale up and what product range do you do? I think the biggest challenges when we were starting was that food waste wasn't an issue. So no one was talking about it. It was seen as quite a sort of penny pinching. There was no environmental credentials around it. And then trying to create not a premium brand, but a better, best in market brand of delicious, sort of funky, modern condiments, but then made from surplus, was a really interesting proposition, and people couldn't really get their heads around. So actually for the first 2 years, I never told anyone about our backstory on the markets. We had one strapline, which was just waste not, want not. But yet there was no messaging around what we did or how we made it, because I was so passionate about, like, first and foremost, we're a food brand and we need to win over everyone just on our taste alone. And then we'll start communicating our backstory, and hopefully that will be a really sticking point. And then I suppose once we had the trials of, we were the first people to be doing anything in this area of utilizing fruit and veg waste. So creating whole new supply chains, ensuring that there was traceability from every step. Manufacturers weren't wanting to work with us because they were wonky fruit and veg, or they were odd shapes or sizes, or they were used to having it pre-chopped. And so we then put up our own processing unit. We manufactured everything ourselves for the first 2.5 years, and then outsourced production. So there was definitely a lot of hurdles. I think that along with the normal every business person's hurdles of just ensuring that you create demand with a very small budget. We did everything on a shoestring until 2015-16. We raised our first small round of investment. And everything up until that was just trial and error, trying to get as much free publicity, getting as many people talking about you and writing stories. And I think we were in that sense, incredibly lucky that food waste was getting a bit of hype and hitting headlines, and we were the only brand doing anything in that area.
You touched on a little bit there in terms of challenges, but it also sounds like that's a journey of sustainability. Could you tell us a bit more about your sustainable journey across your operations, from people to product? So right from the very beginning, at the heart of Rubies and the Rubble, first of all, it came from not so much even food waste from my point of view, but I just, right at the root of it was that we have a planet that has enough food to feed its people, yet we are destroying it. We're not, our food supply chain is broken. We need to value what we've got better. And as we grow as a population, we have got the resources that we need to support us, but we just need to manage them better. And that whole piece about creating food in the most resourceful way was really what I was interested in. And while food was being wasted on such a scale, that's why we've sort of targeted food waste as a first entry point. So I think from that, having a mission and a purpose that is so linked to our products, because it's the main ingredient inside every single product that we have, it became quite simple to be able to ensure that our impact continued as we grew, because every product that every time we sold another product, we made a bit more of an impact. But I think that was sort of at the heart of everything. And then ensuring that from the people point of view, that the farmers, that we created a market for, if we said that this
produce had value, we had to create a value for it. So ensuring that the farmers were paid accordingly, ensuring that it was always true waste as well, and so putting briefs around what that looks like, and it didn't have a market before we started utilising it. And ensuring that we have products that can scale as well, that we could go to town with. So our mayonnaise is being based on aquafaba, which is a byproduct of making hummus. And as long as hummus still gets made, we've got a huge volume of this byproduct, or bean water. And then I suppose keeping those right at the root of what we're doing became really important. I remember we had a potential investor in the early days who came on board and said, like, I love your concept. I can see why people are going to get behind this. It's going to be awesome. But you just got to talk about food waste. Like, you're going to slow yourself down by actually utilizing food waste. It's really complicated. You've got fresh produce. You're going to have to be chopping it. Just make products in the normal way and talk about food waste. Use the products as vehicles of a message. And I could see that we would grow a lot faster. Our products would be half the price, all that sort of side of it. But I didn't start Rubies and the Rubble to create a food product in a way, because I started right at the heart of everything that we were doing was for a solution rather than just to make chutneys or to make condiments. And I think that's the really key part of any founder. Like, there's always a reason why anyone starts a business, and that is normally the mission, or what it might be something as simple as there's nothing else good on the market, so make sure that you're the best in that position. But if you're a purpose-led business, I think it's got to come from the founder, and it's got to come from the heart, and then it's the founder's job to ensure that is never let go of. So every decision, first of all, you're building a team around you of people that also live and believe that same, that have those same values, and every touch point of the brand makes sense from that point of view. And then once you've distilled that, so from a resourceful point of view, it's like, then it's the packaging, it's the how you're getting the route to market, how you're serving your customer, and ensuring that that's done really well. And I think we've just become a BCorp in 2020. I think for us, it's been a fantastic movement as well, to make sure that we're not just relying on the fact that we are a purpose-led brand, but we are ensuring that it's our people, it's the impact, it's their communities as well, and that we're really thinking of it as how can we do better as a business. And we're in a capitalist society. Businesses do form a lot of movement and a lot of the big decision makers in our society. And I think we've got a responsibility to make the society that we want to see and to make that impact. There's a lot of power in business.
That's wonderful. I mean, why was becoming B Corp certified important to you, and what was that like? What was that journey like? What were you most proud of?
Becoming it was important. I think as we grow, so we're still very small. We've just shrunk a little bit more. We're down to sort of 12 of us in the office. And as we have plans to expand quite rapidly, I just wanted to ensure that at the very least we were accountable for some of our actions, and that it created a language internally that everyone was behind what we were doing. And I think even though we are based on solving a purpose, for me, it's not enough just to sort of rely on the fact that we are making our products in a resourceful way. So it wasn't just looking at the ingredients, but it was actually the whole process, and looking at it from the whole supply chain. And it's actually, I mean, B Corp I've heard of, and I've had many people for years pushing for us to apply and do the application. But it is quite resource intensive to do the whole application. You're looking at every level. You're collecting the water amounts from the manufacturers. You're looking at how your food is grown, every part of it, which is fantastic, and it should be a headache to do, because it shows that you're really thinking about it and questioning it as well. But we were just always so strapped for resource that it wasn't something that we were looking at. And I'm so proud that this year, eventually, we've had the time to sort of sit down and think about it. And I also believe that BCorp, having gone through it, it's one that I really rely on, and I rate, and I hope that as it builds, customers can also use that as a very trusted benchmark, because there's so many other certifications that are flying around, some that are very good and others that I'm sure there's, as there often is, a bit of greenwashing in different ways. And this one to me was always the one that I thought was the most reliable and the most heartfelt.
Perhaps could you tell us a little bit about the biggest challenges faced when ensuring that sustainable practices are an integral part of your business decisions?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably still so small on our journey, or young on our journey, but I think for us, the big change that I've had in the last 2 or 3 years is really ensuring that everyone in the team knows what our values are, and that there's actually terminology or a language used. So our three values are 100% resourcefulness, daring to be different, and bringing the rubies out is what we call, like, making things, it's not just enough to have a condiment, like, but you make that smile on people's face and do things better. And I think once we had those 3 values, which don't sound like they're linked that much to sustainability, but it meant that when we make decisions internally, even about our packaging or the way we deliver, or the customers that we work with, we are always questioning, like, is that the most resourceful way of creating that? Like, do we need that packaging? Could we take that away? What is it made of? What's the end use of it? How is the end consumer going to utilize that product as well? And then is this something that we're really proud of? Is it something that people really need? Is it bringing the rubies out? Is it going to really enhance somebody's day? And then daring to be different, to be questioning the norm as well, of not just doing things in the same way. And I think one example of that was in the middle of lockdown, when with 80% of our business being focused on out of home, we sell a lot of ketchup to burger chains, and they were surviving by pivoting to have 100% of their business on delivery. And our big push was, we need your ketchup in sachets now. And normally we supply ketchup in a glass bottle, which is it's got I don't think I've got one around, but it's got a ceramic screen printed label on it, so it can go through the dishwasher 150 times. And instead we supply restaurants with glass bottles that are empty, and give them a 10-litre metal pump of ketchup that they can then just fill up their ketchup bottles as soon as they're empty, wash them out and keep on refilling them. And it's a wonderful story, and for them the message to the consumer is great. The products look amazing on the table, it tastes great, it sort of is a really lovely and encompassing. But then suddenly being asked to keep this business, we're going to have to switch back to the incumbent ketchup that we were using before, to be able to survive in this time. Unless you give us a sachet, we need something to supply with our burgers as we sent them out the door. And the whole weekend I kept thinking, because some of them were quite big accounts, and I said, oh, we're either going to lose this account or we lose one of our really strong beliefs that we will never go into single-use plastic packaging. There's 11 billion sachets that are put into land use every single year in the UK. So I just suddenly thought, well, everyone's sitting in lockdown. Most people have got ketchup in their cupboard. Why on earth do they need this sachet? So instead, we just created a flyer that was called Sachet Away, and it was about joining us in fighting the single-use plastic. And hopefully you've got ketchup in your cupboard. If you don't, here's a ketchup hotline. Get in touch with Rubies and we'll get a bottle over to you on us as soon as possible. And in the first week, I think we sort of sent out 5,000 of these in different burger chains, and we got 20 replies of people saying, I'm caught out of ketchup, I'd like some. But we got hundreds of replies of people just being like, this is epic, I hadn't even thought about this, and like it's made me consciously think of how I'm consuming and the packaging. And I think daring to be different and really questioning the norm, and questioning things that don't sit with your values is so key to any business to thrive, and especially a small business when you're trying to cut through and make a change.
You literally answered my next question, which was, how are you trying to influence your customer behavior and attitudes towards living more sustainably? And that exact point there is by not supplying single-use sachets, you've promoted it. It's because a lot of us are in this kind of like automatic behavior. You know, we're just caught in the motions of doing things. This is how it is. When I order takeaway, I get my single-use cutlery. I get the packaging that's usually polystyrene. Like, and all it needed was a brave team, a brave brand, just to say, you know what, actually, we dare to be different here. We're not going to supply it this way. There's a better way of doing things. And the behavior changed because guess what? They have to. And I think you've now built that nice relationship with some of those people that may have otherwise just got their sachet out, ripped it, used it, and not even thought second about it. Now, every time probably they go to order and they can question, do I need this little sachet now or not? You know, I love that.
Because I think there's a lot of power in how we consume as consumers as well. I always think that, like, if you see your cash as a vote for the future that you want, and the vote for the kind of world that you want as well, it's every purchase that you make or the way that you consume is really defining what is the norm and what is accepted in society. And it's I love it when I have friends, especially my husband's friends as well, when I come round for dinner and you can see them getting nervous if they're going to throw away food, and or like if I'm questioning it, let's put it in a Tupperware, we'll take it home and things. And I think as soon as you've done it once or twice, people are like, yeah, of course, it's an embarrassment to be seen discarding perfectly good food. Like, I should be valuing this. There's always a cost to this, and seeing it as that it's an environmental need for us to be, it's ignorant to be wasting. And I think just changing that mindset shift of people and getting them out of the automated journey and treadmill that we're all on, and constantly questioning what you are doing.
What would you like other companies to learn from Rubies in a Rubble?
I feel like we're normally learning from other companies, so it'd be a delight to feel like others are. I think there's so many companies that I admire and are doing fantastic things in different ways. I think if we were changing anything or wanting other companies to get behind, first of all, I'd love more and more companies to become BCorp, because I think that would be fantastic to get a wave from the consumer on a shelf to really recognize that businesses are doing different, and you could almost see companies what their impact is on the planet. Where at the moment, or one of our targets for 2021 is to properly track our whole carbon footprint and become carbon neutral. And I love Oatly, for example, starting to put their carbon impact on the front of pack, so that consumers are a little bit more aware of that. And I think the more, I think if there was one thing that I would love from other companies, just to be transparent with people. I think consumers love transparency. You don't have to be perfect. We're not perfect, but sharing that journey with people, of sort of showing you where you're at. And I think there's business sense in that as well. It shows a sense of belonging, and the consumer can properly get behind it and feel like they're part of a brand as well, and part of a journey. And they'll also trust the brand a lot more as well, rather than ever feeling like there's a bit of greenwashing or anything. I think brands that have done that in the past, where they are just so open with where they're at and where they're going, what their plans are, what their visions are, but that they're on a journey, people get behind it a lot more.
Transparency leads to trust, for sure.
Yeah.
And you touched on a little bit, but what companies do you take inspiration from, and which leaders do you most admire?
I was going to say Karen Lynch from Baloo. She was always been and she still is, a mentor to me, but a real role model. She's just actually stepped down from running Baloo, but she has been fantastic and a real inspiration in that area. I think Cassandra from Popcorn has done an incredible job at just bringing a boring category to life in a way. I was trying to think. Toast Ale are obviously huge. We're great friends of Toast Ale, who make beer from waste bread, and Rob Wilson has done a great job of just getting that out there and building that brand. And I think from larger brands, as big brands go, I think Unilever are fantastic in making long-term change, and that there is a shift in their focus instead of short-term goals, but actually looking at long-term goals. And I think unless we look at long-term goals, sustainability is never seen as a business need. And as soon as you look at it in a long-term point of view, you're suddenly like, of course, sustainability has to be right at the heart of business, and it does have a business point to play, I suppose, or place to play.
Finally, Jenny, what's next for Rubies in a Rubble? What are you most worried about, and what are you most hopeful for?
Oh, well, next for us is we are launching quite sort of majorly for us anyway, or growing quite quickly into the retail space. I suppose I'm like any small brand going into that area, worried about getting swamped in what I call the graveyard aisle of the supermarket, which no one really browses down when they know the product they're going to get, they know they're getting their olive oil. So getting in there with probably one or two little facings in amongst a sea of red, and just so I suppose nervous of standing out and how we do that with a small budget. I'm excited by this, oddly, in this time of COVID, and I think there is a lot of positivities that can be drawn out of this time of people having more time to think at home for sustainability, and brands with a purpose being more than ever wanted by consumers, and people having a bit more time to question what they eat, perhaps having gone to their local butcher or greengrocer for the first time and really started appreciating the difference in taste between different produce and products as well. And I think there's a bigger connection with good food and what goes into your body and wellness, and also just wanting to consume in a more responsible way. So I'm excited by that shift, and also the shift of as well. I think there's a much bigger awareness shift in the environmental area and the sustainability point in food. So I love seeing those changes, and I think with us going into retail as well, we've been forced to grow up a bit as a brand. We're being forced to be a bit more punchy. There's some wonderful things, although horrible things, that so many people are spending a lot of time on their phones at the moment, and in an awful way, but as a small brand, it's a very cheap way of putting tactics in to try and raise brand awareness, by like we're always thinking, how do you get onto the front of somebody's phone? But we are spending a lot more time on digital media. I'm excited by some of our product ranges that are coming out. We've got a garlic mayo that's launching in January, which I'm already obsessed with. And we've got a whole range of different supporting sauces to go alongside the ketchup. We're being quite playful with our products at the moment. So now I've got a lot to look forward to. And 2021, I'm super excited by it, probably because this year has felt, for so many of us, quite a closed in year. And it'll be wonderful just to be out and about and exploring again.
Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate it. So please tell us where we can find you and where can we pick up some of your delicious products.
Thank you. Well, you can find us we're on the website, we're on Amazon, Ocado, Waitrose, Co-op. Come to our website. We'd love to get in touch, and please if as well, sign up to our newsletter on the website or send me an email. It'd be great to hear from you. And that's rubiesinarubble.com. Yes, that's right. Thank you so much, Jenny. Really appreciate your time today. Lovely to speak to you. Bye-bye.